Welcome back to Sweet Yellow House and our Forgotten Five Tuesday. This is our second installment in this series, so let's get started. Project 1, we're going to grab some aviary, this greenish paint from DIY, and we're going to finish up this project here. I started painting this a while back and I just never finished, so my thought was to combine the two to make a raised dish. So I'm gonna start and paint the bottom of this just to finish it, and just do a quick coat on it. I think I just did one and that was enough. So once I got that covered, and I didn't even let it dry, just covered it, and then carefully I got my DIY white wax and I white waxed the bottom. I didn't do the top just so that the glue would have a better stick to it. So I also did the top of the tray around because it has some really great detail. This tray you saw used to be wood, so I just put it on and wiped it off, and I did the inside as well. I just covered the whole thing except for the bottom. I didn't do that. You can see that it's still dry, so I just took my heat gun and dried that quickly. So I got my clear Gorilla Glue and I put a coat around the top of the candlestick, and I also used some glue gun just so that it would have some quick adhesion while the other glue set up, and I just stuck those together, centered it, and that's pretty much it for that one. So moving on to project 2, I have these really cute little picture frames, so I just undid the back of them and the picture was actually stuck, it was on the back, so I removed that, removed the glass, and I'm gonna just take a wet wipe and just kind of wipe these down. They were a little bit dusty, so I'm gonna go back to my aviary green paint from DIY, and I'm gonna give those frames a good 2 coats. I just want to make sure that I have full coverage on those. So it has some fine detail in there, but nothing too drastic. So but I just did 2 coats and got some full coverage. So I went ahead and took my Titebond and my paper clay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill that little concave section of in the middle of that frame, just because I am gonna be putting some molds on this, and I wanted it to have more of a surface to hang on to. So that's all I'm gonna do for that, is I'm just putting the glue down and filling it with the paper clay. So once I got all of that covered, I didn't even wait for it to dry. I just went ahead and moved on to my next step. So I got 2 of the IOD molds and the Horse and Hound, which is a new one, and this one here, and I'm not sure what the name is. I want to say Queen Bee, but I don't think that's it. And I used different parts of each of these molds, and I did stick these in the freezer for 20 minutes just because there was a lot of fine details in the ones that I was using. So I went ahead and made all of the molds that I thought I was gonna need. I used the little acorn details from the Horse and Hound, and then just this little border leaf section from the other mold set. So, and then I just glued those down with my Titebond where it looked pleasing to me, and I thought it looked good. So I went all the way around the frame, this is just Titebond glue in this syringe, so I can get under there without having to lift the molds all the way off. So once I got those done, I set them aside and let them dry. And then I got these 2 colors and I mixed them together because one was too dark and one was too white. And I just went over the backing and covered those pictures, and I did about 2 coats. So once my molds were dried and set up, I went back to the green paint and I mixed that with some water because it had those molds have some really fine details in the leaves and the acorns, and I just wanted to keep that. This paint is very thick on its own, and you will lose some of that fine detail if you don't thin it out. I mean, it's a really great paint, but for delicate stuff like this, you need to thin it out. And the great thing about this is it doesn't lose any of its color. It's so pigmented that adding water to it, you're not going to lose any color at all. So you can see here that I messed up that little leaf when I turned it over on its side. So I just got my syringe that's full of glue, and I'm able to kind of get into that little crack and fix it with no problem. And then after I got the glue where I wanted, I just took a cheap little paintbrush and kind of smoothed that glue out, and I was able to fix it, and you never be able to tell that I actually did that. So once the paint was dry on that, I actually went back and I got my white wax, and I got a really soft paintbrush, and I used that. I didn't use a regular like wax brush because I wanted to be able to get into those fine details and not disturb those molds at all. I just felt like using a regular wax hard bristle brush, I run the risk of maybe like, you know, breaking one of those fine molds off, because I had some that are hanging off, you know, the edge and are kind of just floating there. So I didn't want to run the risk of breaking those off, and I just felt like a regular wax brush was going to be too harsh. So I just did a section at a time, and I put the wax on and took it off with a paper towel, just being mindful of that. And then I did the inside rim with the wax as well, and also the outside. So once I got that wax put down and it wiped off where I wanted, I got my gilding wax, of course, and I just went over and skimmed the top of all that detail. I didn't go super heavy, but I wanted to make sure that it got some great detail. I didn't go into the tiny little grooves. I just skimmed the top because I didn't want to lose that white wax and the green being able to come through there. So that's it for that one. Project 3, I have two of these, but these cute little metal like wall plaques. So at one time you can see I painted them black, so I'm going to go back to my aviary paint, and I'm just going to give this a couple of coats just to cover up that black paint that I had there. So I did about 2 coats on that, and then heat gunned it in between the coats. Then what I did is I grabbed all the little odd and end transfers that I had laying around, just from different transfer sets and stuff, and grabbed any little flower ones that I thought looked good together, and I just kind of layered those and moved them around to see where I liked them. So, and then I put them down, whatever looks pleasing to me, that's where I put it. So, and then I thought this one needed a cute little butterfly, so I put that on there, and that's pretty much how I finished that up. But after I got all of those transfers down, I did 2 coats of the liquid patina and let that dry in between coats, just so that those transfers were going to be protected and they wouldn't scratch off or anything like that, because I'm moving on to a next step, and I'm going to make some letter molds out of this crazy quick setup, makes my life miserable resin. So it's just equal parts. You mix the equal parts together, and once you put those together, you'll see that it's cloudy, and with a matter of like maybe 20 seconds it'll go clear. Once it goes clear, stop stirring and start pouring, because it will set up. It's setting up now. So, and it'll be quick. So the reason why I was able to kind of go back and use this, even though I swore I never would, is that I decided I would try putting it in a syringe just to see if I can then get it into those little tiny molds, which it for the most part, it did work. It worked well. So I think anytime that I am going to do something like that, I will do it this way. So those took about 10-15 minutes to set up. I popped them out, and then I just went over them with gloved hands with the gilding wax, because it just seemed to coat it in a quicker fashion than using a brush. I just used the brush to get the fine details that I couldn't get my finger tips in there. So once I got those all covered, I wanted to glue them to my little plaques, putting the words that I wanted on there, and I used the clear Gorilla Glue to do that. And once those were dry and set up, I did do a couple of coats of the clear matte finish. So project 4, I had this wall plaque thing and so I went back to my green paint and I did a couple of coats of that on there, and it took probably about a good 3 coats. It's, so I did front and back, just kind of covering them, so it did a good job. And once I got it painted, it just took on a kind of a life of its own. It looked completely different to me. So I got that painted solid, and I let it dry. And once that was dry, I got my trimmings 3 IOD mold and my paper clay, and I'm just gonna put some trim around the edge of that bowl part. So I decided to use this I think the first one on there, that's kind of like the biggest one there. So I just filled that with clay. You've seen me do that 100 times, and smooth the back of it out so that way it would lay flat against the wall hanging. So once I got that, I didn't put this in the freezer, but I just went ahead and I was able to roll that out with actually no problem. So that went okay. So I made 2 of these molds, and the great thing about these is that they're able to kind of like interlock with each other, so you kind of get a continuous seamless mold there for the trimming. So that was a really great design thought. So I just took my Titebond and a paintbrush, and I just painted the back of these with the glue, and I stuck them on to the edge of that. And once I got this place where I want it, I just took some painter's tape, and I kind of held that in place with the painter's tape just till it's set up so it wouldn't slide around. This is a curved surface, so it wanted to kind of slide down the bowl there. So once I got all of that covered with the trimmings, and then got the tape in place, I cut off the excess, and I let that set up. So once those molds were dry and set in place and the glue was dry, I took some more Titebond, and I just used that kind of as a filler with some of the cracks that I felt like were too significant. So and I just used a paintbrush. So then I let that dry, and I went back with my aviary green paint, and I did about 2 coats on the trim there, and I just let it dry in between that. And I didn't get it, but I lost the footage somewhere. So I did cover this with white wax once that paint was dry. So project 5 was kind of a quick project. This is not the project, this is just a sample to explain it, because for some reason my camera didn't get the footage. But basically you drill a hole in the top of the candlestick holder. Then you want to put a base on there so that your basket has something solid to sit on. And then you want to actually get a screw that will fit through everything and put that all the way through. And you want to use that circle grommet so that way your screw doesn't go right through your basket. So I hope that's easy to understand. So Thank you for spending your time with me. And if you're interested in any of these items, they're going to be on my website for sale. So thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. It really helps me out. So I will see you Friday.